Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to get some data from a text file and bring it into your web page or your application asynchronously using the XHR object. Alright, so what I have here is just a very basic layout. I'm using skeleton CSS, and we just have a container. We have a button inside here with the ID of button. We have a couple line breaks and then a div with the ID of output, and then we're just including our app.js. So very, very simple, just a single button that says get data. And if we look at if we look at data.txt, which I have in the same directory, it just says some plain text data. Okay, that's all I put in here, and you can put whatever you want in here. So what we're going to do is go into app.js, and from here we want to first of all create an event listener for this button. Okay, we know how to do that. So let's say document.getElementById. It has an ID of button. And then we want to add an event listener. So we want to listen for a click. And then we're going to call a function called loadData. All right, and then we'll go ahead and create that function. So in this load data, an extra T in there. So in this load data function, first thing we want to do is create an XHR object. Okay, and to do that, we're going to create a variable called XHR. You'll see XHR, or sometimes you'll actually see XML HTTP like that. XHR is a lot shorter. I like to use that. And we're going to set this to new. Okay, just like we would use any constructor for any object, and then we're going to say XML HTTP request. Okay, so we're actually instantiating it just like any other object, just like we would with a custom object that we created a constructor for. Okay, now this object, just like any object, has properties and methods associated with it. One of those is open. Okay, so open is basically where we're going to specify the type of request we want to make and the URL or the file name that we want to make it to. So we're going to take that XHR object and we're going to call .open. And then the first parameter will be the type of request. We're going to make a GET request. And then the file that we want to make it to is going to be data.txt. All right, we want this to be asynchronous, so the third parameter is going to be true. All right, so now we have our open. Now what we want to do is call xhr.onload, and we want to actually set that to a function. And then in here, we want to do whatever it is we need to do with the data that we get. Okay, now we want to just do a check first to make sure that the status is equal to 200, because in HTTP the 200 status means everything's okay, everything went well. So I'm actually going to paste this in real quick down here. Alright, so HTTP statuses, these are not all of them, but some common ones are 200 means okay, 403 is forbidden, 404 means the page is not found. Alright, so we want to go in here and we want to say if. And by the way, Ajax and XHR is more complicated than Fetch. Fetch is the newer standard, and we'll get into that later on. But I did want to include Ajax as well. All right, so now we can say this, referring to the XHR object, and it has a property of status. Okay, we want to see if that is equal to 200. If it is, that means everything's okay. Okay, so let's actually do console.log. And then there's another property we can access called response text. Okay, you can see right here, response text. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually save that and open up our console. And let's click the button, which does nothing. Let's see. Element by ID button. Let's see if this is actually being called. Okay, so this is being called. So we're creating the XHR object. new XML HTTP request. Let's see. Then we're opening it. Get request. Oh, we didn't call send. To finalize everything, we actually have to do send, like that. All right, so let's try it again. So now we'll click the button, and now in the console you can see some plain text data. So now this is coming from data.txt. Okay, so let me just reiterate what we've done here. We have an event listener. We click it. It calls this function. We create a new instance of the XHR object. We call the .open, and then we pass in the type of request we want, which is a GET request. A GET request basically means you just want to read the file or read the URL. And then data.text is what we're reading in. Now, when everything is ready, it's going to call this onload, and we want to make sure it's a status of 200, which means OK. And then we're going to console log the response text, which is the data that's included in this file. Okay, and then finally we have to do send for it to actually send and to work. All right, so that's what's going on here. Now, when you go through this process, there's a couple of different what's called ready state values. So I want to paste those in as well. So it goes through this process. 0 means the request is not initialized. 1 means the server connection is established. 2, request is received. 3, it's processing the request. And 4, the request's finished and the response is ready. Now, at this point, when onload loads, we're already at step 4, which is what we want. Now, onload is fairly new. Before that, we actually had to do XHR.onReady state change, and we had to check to make sure that we were actually at step 4. All right, so let me give you an example of that. So we would have to do like XHR.onReady state change and say equal function. And in here, let's do if. Now we would still have to test for the status of 200. So we'd say if this dot status is equal to 200, but we'd also have to check for this dot ready state is equal to 4. All right, then we could proceed to do what we want, which in this case will just console log the data. So let's save that and let's click the button and we get the same thing. All right, now we can access the state we're at by calling xhr.readystate. So what I want to do is go to certain points in this whole process and log the ready state. So let's go right under the open, and we'll just go ahead and console.log. And let's put in here ready state, and we'll say xhr.readystate. All right, so if I save that and we click the button, you'll see at this point, ready state is at 1, which is server connection established. All right, so let's copy this, and let's go ahead and put this, let's put this right in here. So on ready state change, let's save, let's click the button, and you'll see that when on ready state change runs, it goes through the whole thing. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's why we actually have to check for ready state 4. We have to make sure that it's at this point before we do anything. Now, like I said, this is kind of an older syntax. So if I comment this out and I uncomment on load, and we go ahead and put in the console log ready state and we click the button, you can see it's already at 4. This 1 is coming from this right here. I can actually comment that out. But by the time on load runs, we're already at ready state 4, so we don't have to check for it like we used to with on ready state change. All right, so I would suggest not even using this, but I just wanted to mention it. Now, one other thing I want to mention is a method called onProgress that you can use. So if we say actually let me put a comment in here that says optional. So this is basically used for spinners or loaders. So if you want something to display while it's actually loading or fetching the data, whatever it's doing, you could do XHR.progress, or I'm sorry, XHR.onProgress. And let's go ahead and just console log the ready state in this case. So we'll click the button and you can see that it's on ready state 3. Okay, on progress it's going to be 3, which if we look down here is processing request. So as it's basically thinking or fetching, it's going to be on ready state 3, and you can put in a spinner or a loader or anything like that. All right. One other thing that I want to mention is that you probably want to also put in XHR.onError in case something goes wrong. Okay, so this will only run if something goes wrong, and you just maybe want to console.log and just say like request error, something like that. All right, so that there's no error, so everything was fine. Now we have the data, so it's up to you what you want to do with it. We're just console logging it at this point, but if we wanted to, we could go to our onload and comment this out, and we could go ahead and take that text element that we have, or not text, output. We have a div with the ID of output, so we could say document.get element by ID output and say dot inner HTML equals, and we could go ahead and put in an H1. Actually, we'll use template strings here, so we'll use backticks. That way we can put a variable in here, and we can say this dot response text. Alright, so now we'll click the button and we get that data output in the browser. Alright, so no page refresh, nothing like that. It all happened behind the scenes. So in the next video, what I want to do is talk a little bit about JSON, because that's what you're usually going to be working with. Not too often will you be working with a text file. So we'll talk about JSON syntax, and then also how to fetch JSON and then output it in the browser and do what you want with it.